Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Platt, and welcome to the Informal Procurement for School Nutrition Programs webinar. So what is procurement? Procurement is the process of purchasing goods and services. The reason why I say process is because in federally funded programs, you can't just go out and buy whatever you want, whenever you want. You have to follow a process so that you can ensure taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. So the process that you use to make the purchase will depend on the type of procurement you're making. There are different types or methods of procurement which can be broken down into both informal or formal methods. The informal procurement methods include micro purchasing and small purchasing. And the formal methods include invitation for bid or IFB, request for proposal, also called RFP, and sole source. The method you use will depend on the value of the purchase and then what your needs are as well. So today we're just going to focus on informal procurement methods. If the value of your purchase is below $250,000, informal procurement can be used. This is called the small purchase threshold, meaning that $250,000 is the threshold that determines whether or not you can use informal or formal procurement. $250,000 is the federal threshold, but locally your threshold might be different. It might be more restrictive. If the value of your purchase is below $10,000, micro purchase procedures can be followed. Any purchase over $250,000 must follow formal procurement procedures. So these thresholds that you see here on the screen are for when you're required to use a certain procurement method. It's okay to be more restrictive, such as using a formal procedure if you're buying something that's less than $250,000, but it's not okay to be less restrictive. So for example, you can't use micro purchase procedures for a purchase greater than $10,000. So now let's dive into the process of informal procurement. Again, the dollar threshold at your local district level may be different, which is fine, as long as it's more restrictive than the federal thresholds that we just looked at. And you should be able to find this information in your procurement policies. The policy should list the dollar amount at which formal bidding would be used, or your policy might say something similar to what you see on the screen here, which says that procurement methods for federally funded contracts adhere to certain dollar amounts. So school nutrition programs are federally funded. So if you see a section similar to this in your bidding and purchasing policies, this is the section where you would determine what the school nutrition program dollar threshold is for purchasing. If you have questions about your district policies, feel free to reach right out to me. We can go through them together to determine what your thresholds are. So how do you know if you should be following micro purchase or small purchase procedures? The method you use will depend on the amount of the purchase and the process that you will be following. Micro purchase procedures can be used when the amount of a single transaction is less than or equal to $10,000, or your local threshold if that's more restrictive. And with micro purchasing, it's all about spreading the wealth or distributing your purchases equitably among qualified vendors as much as possible. And we'll go through examples of this in a minute. Keep in mind that with micro purchasing, it's not necessarily the most economical option for your program. Prices do have to be reasonable, so you're not going to buy, pay for something if it's not a price you'd be willing to pay personally, for example. So prices do have to be reasonable, but you will most likely get better pricing if you follow other procurement methods. So it's just important to be aware of that with micro purchasing. So here's an example of using micro purchasing for a one-time purchase. So let's say I need to run out and pick up a couple extra loaves of bread. This is a one-time purchase that I'll make from the Hannaford in town. And next time I need to just run out and pick something up, I will make the purchase from Shaw's. And after that, I will go to Walmart. So notice I'm not buying from the same vendor every time with micro-purchasing. This is because you are supposed to share the wealth to the maximum extent practicable. If you only have one store in town, then you're not expected to drive 45 minutes away just so that you can share the wealth, but you do need to maintain documentation annually, at least, that you've done your due diligence to look for other vendors to make a similar purchase from. Here's an example of using micro-purchasing for multiple or recurring purchases. So let's say you're buying local produce. This week I will buy from Farmer A. Next week I'll buy from Farmer B. And the week after that from Farmer C. The important point here is that you are not purchasing from the same vendor every time, and instead you're shopping from a variety of vendors and distributing the value of your purchases equitably. Equitably is a key word there as well. The value of your purchase, the amount you're spending, should be fairly equal among the vendors. A couple of key points with micro-purchasing. You do not have to comparison shop or get price quotes before making a purchase, but you do have to save documentation that you have spread your purchases among the vendors. So you could do this with a basic log having the date, the items you purchased, vendor name, and total cost, in addition to copies of the receipts. The small purchase method is commonly called 3 bids and a buy, and this can be used when the value of your purchase is $250,000 or less. Again, that's the federal threshold level. And price is the primary factor when determining who you will purchase from. That's why this method may allow you to purchase from the same vendor over time. There are certain steps that you have to follow with small purchase procedures. So to begin with, you need to have clear written specifications. This is what allows you to make fair and equal comparisons of the same product from multiple vendors. With your specifications, for example, you don't just want to say, I need to buy an apple. You want to spell out specifically what it is that you want. So you want a US number 1, 125 to 138 count apple of any variety. You want 5 cases delivered to each school once a week, August through December. Now, with these clear specs, you can contact Farmer A, B, and C, along with any other potential vendors that might be out there. You can request prices, whether it's by phone, email, fax, or even in person, by providing them with the exact same specifications. Next, you'll evaluate the price quotes or the responses that you've received from the various vendors, and you will award the contract. So that means make the purchase to the vendor who was the lowest price, but also responsive and responsible. Meaning, if a vendor responds with the lowest price, but they're not willing to deliver the apples just like you requested in the solicitation, then that vendor is not responsive and responsible, and you would not award the contract to them. It is important also that you manage the contract for compliance. So over time, you're making sure that the vendor is doing what it is they agreed to do in the contract. Regardless of how you receive the quotes, they must be documented to support the process. Here's an example of using small purchasing for a one-time purchase. Let's say you need a few loaves of bread. With this method, you'll write out what you want. So it might be whole grain bread, 24 1-ounce slices. You will compare prices among 2 or ideally 3 vendors, and then buy from the lowest price vendor that has the product you were looking for. So how does this differ from micro purchasing? They seem quite similar in this example. But remember, micro purchasing is about shopping equitably from all possible suppliers. So this week you buy the bread from Hannaford, next week from Shaw's. Small purchase is all about price comparisons and shopping from the lowest price vendor. You can also use the small purchase method for items you want to purchase on a regular basis. Again, you need to write out what it is you want. Whole grain bread, 24 1-ounce slices, delivered to all my schools weekly. You'll then need to contact at least 2 vendors, again, preferably 3, but 2 is allowable, to your vendors that will sell and deliver bread. Evaluate the responses that you receive. If you reached out to 2 vendors and only heard back from 1, then the answer is pretty easy. So your job is to make sure you're soliciting or reaching out to at least 2 vendors. You don't have to hear back from both. You can't control that side of things if you don't hear back from both vendors. So just important to be aware of that. So you'll purchase from the vendor that offers the lowest price and can provide you with what you asked for. So in this example, if a vendor had the lowest price, but they only had sub rolls available, or maybe they have the lowest price, but they can't deliver to you, you would then throw out their offer. Finally, manage the contract. So again, this just means you're checking to make sure they're honoring the price and the service that they quoted you. Creating a solicitation is basically creating a grocery list. It's when you write out what it is specifically that you are looking for. And it's really important for this procurement process because it allows you to share the same information with all vendors. So it allows you to be fair to all vendors. And it allows you to compare apples to apples, so to speak. So you want to be specific and you want to detail what it is you're looking for. For example, you aren't just going to ask for milk, but you're going to specify the type of milk, the packaging size, the quantity, and any other requirements, such as if you want it delivered, where you want it delivered, how often. When creating specs for food items, you must include the Buy American provision. After you receive responses, you must evaluate for compliance with your request. Make sure to document the vendor name, contact information, price and quantity quoted, the duration of the price quote, and whether or not the contract was awarded to that vendor. And this is just a sample form on your screen. You can use any form you want. In terms of documentation, it's very important that you maintain documentation of your procurement process. And this is information we will request as part of the procurement review. Documentation should include the solicitation, which has your specifications, any documented responses from vendors, proof that you did an evaluation or price comparison, and how you selected the winner, and a signed written contract between both parties. You will use this when comparing prices charged and what was quoted and agreed on. I find that with small purchases, there's really a range of more formal to less formal. Less formal, the example being running out to the local store and buying bread, where you're still price comparison, but you're really not going to have a signed written contract. But for recurring purchases, such as a weekly bread delivery, this is an example when you would really want a signed contract between you and the vendor. So how do you determine if you should use the micro or small purchase method? You need to decide what is best for your program while also adhering to the regulations. Micro purchasing is all about spreading the wealth. Small purchasing is all about getting the lowest price, and it can allow you to buy from the same vendor for a period of time. So as long as your purchase is below the appropriate thresholds, you really can determine what's right for your program. Okay, so here's a scenario. You want to purchase milk for the school year. You want the lowest price, and you want weekly deliveries. The anticipated value is $8,500. So which procurement method do you think you should use? Small purchase method would be appropriate here. while it's less than the $10,000 threshold for micro purchases, so micro purchases would be allowed, the small purchase method is best because this is a recurring expense and because you're looking for the lowest price. So what should the specifications look like? You'd probably want to spell out that you're looking for a 1% white and fat-free chocolate milk, 8-ounce cartons, delivered to each of your schools. I emailed my specifications to 2 companies and both can deliver. How do I know which one to choose? The one with the lowest price that also meets the requirements in the solicitation is the one that you will choose. Occasionally, I need to pick up items such as produce and bread when they don't come in on my delivery. I rotate my purchases between the local market and Walmart in my town. What procurement method am I using? Because you are sharing purchases among the vendors and not purchasing based on lowest price, this is micro purchasing. Do I need to compare prices? No, but you really should check that the prices are reasonable. What if I only wanted to purchase from my local market? Then you would need to change to the small purchase method where you're comparing prices between various vendors and buying from the least expensive option. So that may not guarantee you purchasing from the local market, but it may if they can offer the lowest price and give you what you need. I need to buy a new walk-in. It will cost more than $10,000. What procurement method should I use? You would need to follow the small purchase method. It's also important to note that with equipment, if it's greater than $5,000, you're required to get state agency approval. We do have a list on our website, however, of equipment that has already been granted pre-approval by state agency. So if the piece of equipment is on that list, that's already been granted. But if it's an item that's not on the list, you need to get state agency approval. What are my specifications for the walk-in? Well, for example, it might be you need a 6x6x6 self-closing door, locking deadbolt handles, and you want it delivered. And in terms of documentation that you need, maintain the written specifications, the evaluation of the price quotes that you received, and a copy of the invoice of the purchase. My annual food purchases are $80,000. I've been using the same vendor for years and I really like them. I do not have a contract. I have not obtained price quotes from other companies. What procurement method am I using? You're not. Basically, you're using the incorrect one. This practice is not compliant and you really should be following small purchase procedures. Is there anything else I need to do? Yes, absolutely. You need to start by creating a solicitation and getting price quotes from at least 2 vendors. Then evaluate the price quotes and make your purchases from there. I purchased beverages for a la carte vending exclusively from one company. The high school principal signed a contract and with the company, and the high school principal receives $2,500 a year as a result. Am I procuring properly? No. If the contract applies to the school nutrition program, the agreement must be between the federal school nutrition program and the vendor. If federal procurement procedures were not followed, then the terms of that existing contract do not apply to the school nutrition program. So is there anything else that I need to do? Yep, starting immediately, you need to either purchase from 2 different companies. So one might be the existing company, and then you'll find a similar company. So basically, you'd be following micro procurement, purchasing from 2 different companies equitably. Or you can create a solicitation, get price quotes, evaluate, and award to the lowest price vendor. To wrap things up, every purchase you make from the school nutrition account must follow the micro, small, or formal procurement procedures and be supported with documentation. If you find that you are buying exclusively from Walter's Food Service because he's a great guy or because you always have, you are not compliant. If you have a salesperson stop by and place the order for you and you're not doing price comparisons, you are not compliant. I realize Maine is a rural and spread out state and not every distributor is willing to deliver to you, or perhaps you only have one option for a vendor. The important thing with procurement is that you do your due diligence at least annually. So if you've only been buying from Walter's Food Service, then right now, reach out to David's Food Service and see if maybe this year they'll deliver to you. Yes, in the past, they've always said, no, we won't, but maybe now this year they will. So do your due diligence at least annually and reach out and see if anything has changed. Or maybe you always buy from that market in town because they're right there and that's just what you've done. But maybe a new store has opened up and you could also buy from them doing micro purchasing, or you can get price quotes. The important thing is that you need to do your due diligence of seeking out potential vendors, keep documentation of doing so for your justification. So we do have time to take some questions. So if you want to type a question in the chat box, we can go ahead and start answering those. I don't see any in there currently, but we'll give it a couple minutes to see if any come in. And I see a few coming in. There's a question about where is the list of exempt equipment. I'm sorry I can't provide you with the exact link right now because I don't have it in front of me, but if you want to reach out to Paula or Michelle or myself, I can get you that link, but it is somewhere on our webpage. Michelle Bisbee would be the best contact for you, but any of us can help. Okay, there's a question that a vendor delivers food to their school weekly, and they would like to also buy bread from them, but this vendor will not give them price quotes. Is there a way to use them as a bread vendor? So if you are going to buy bread from them, if it's not based on lowest price from the quotes, then you need to use micro purchase methods, meaning sharing the wealth. So it sounds like if they're not going to give you quotes, yes, you could buy from them, but then you also need to buy from another vendor. At the same time, if you're buying from them, you're now seeing the prices. So that would then allow you to do price quotes. Or I'd put out like an informal solicitation. It sounds like maybe if they will do a longer term contract, so if you do an informal solicitation with specifically what you're looking for, maybe they would respond better that way to price quotes. If that didn't answer your question, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk through it. There's a question about CRF purchases. I'm guessing that is the Corona Relief Fund. If the purchase is being made from the school nutrition account, you do need to follow federal procurement procedures. So I'm not sure if that's the case here. I think I would need more information. So if you want to reach out to me, I think that's from Dave, feel free to call me directly and we can talk through that. And David Hartley said the link for the state approved equipment list is on our programs page. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a link for equipment assistance. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. But as always, please feel free to reach out if you think of a question after this webinar. Feel free to reach out and we can walk through it together. Happy to do that at any time. So thank you for your time today, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.